welcome back to Elder Futhark Rune Divination 101. Today we will be discussing the third rune in the Elder Futhark, which goes by the name of Thurisaz, in other words, the rune of chaos. Now, before we begin, I'd like to apologize for not having uploaded any videos last week. This is because I've been rather busy with arranging my my studies in the United States, and that I've had a lot of stress. I've had a lot of things going on, basically, which literally just sucked up all the time that I had, and I ended up not being able to make doing videos. So again, my apologies for that. My apologies also that this is on a different date than usual. Normally I make my videos on Friday and I edit them and upload them on Friday and Saturday. Starting next week, we will simply be resuming the schedule. So the first weekly video will simply be on a Friday, as you are used to, and the next video after that will be on a Saturday. So yeah, that said, let's begin. The rune that we will be discussing, like I said, is Thurisaz. Thurisaz is the third rune in the Elder Futhark. It is pronounced as Thurisaz. I will add a little description in the video itself so that you can, look it up and as to how you would pronounce it. Thurisaz is actually related to our compound of th in English, like the god Thor or thumb. Obviously the associated god is also Thor. It is also related to the giants of the Nordic and Germanic beliefs. Whereas the Aesir and the Vanir are the gods of the Nordic and Germanic beliefs. The giants can be seen more as the counterparts of the gods, where the gods represent order, the giants overall represent chaos, or the chaotic, destructive forces of the universe, and the gods are the creative forces of order. The associated planet in astrology that we relate to Thurisaz is the planet Mars, which is a very, very fitting planet actually, because this rune is, associated with things such as strife, war, passion, aggression, competition, ambition, that sort of thing. It is the rune of evil, of chaos, of temptation. I hesitate to use the word evil because, what is evil, the associated element that is associated with Thurisaz is fire. It is a force that burns brightly. It is a force that consumes. It is a force that empowers. It is a force that overtakes. So it is a very fitting element to associate with this rune. And the reasons for that is what we will hopefully come to understand later on in this video. Now, what does Thurisaz mean? Thurisaz means literally giant, or the god Thor. You can kind of hear it, Thurisaz, Thor, Thurisaz. The connection, the relation is obvious. Because again, as I said, Thurisaz is the rune of chaos, and the Thurs, or the giants, are more associated with the chaotic forces of the universe. So it means a giant, or the god Thor. It can also, in a different interpretation, form, because the energy that is Thurisaz does not necessarily have to be quote-unquote negative or evil, in the sense that it always does harm to bring harm. It can also do harm in order to protect, because sometimes you can kind of equate Thurisaz as the thorn that protects the rose, so that people do not actually, grab the rose without paying a price for it in a way. And that is another element that is inherent to the rune Thurisaz, because there's always a price to pay for certain actions that we take, for the evil, for the chaos, for the temptations that we face as human beings, that we face as spiritual beings, that we face as, basically that everyone and everything faces at some point in their existence, in their cycle. So in this sense, it is both protection, and it is also offense, defense and offense. And you can interpret this in so many ways, which we will be discussing in this video. It is a rune that when it shows up in a rune reading, it tends to be a warning. It can mean many things, such as temptations or threats to a person or to your person, to somebody else. If you are the subject of the reading, for example, if you are willingly or unwillingly, or unknowingly, I should say, knowingly or unknowingly, could perhaps do harm to another person by your actions. If something that you do with your job or in your love life, for example, something that you do brings harm to either the people that you do business with or the one that you love. You may not even realize it, but if you're going to inquire about such things and this rune shows up, it is a pretty good indicator that this is actually something that you need to be very careful of. It is a rune that relates to our psyche, to the human emotions, the underlying, the conscious and the subconscious mind. It can indicate things such as anger, desire, sloth, lust instead of love. It can, bad luck. All these things is what it can mean. It is sometimes seen as a bad omen, a bad portent, that something is awry, something is amiss. This does not necessarily, however, have to always be the case. Thurisaz can sometimes be seen as a stroke of luck. Why is this so? Because, like I said, Thurisaz can also be interpreted as a form, a protective edge, protective power, protective energy. Because if somebody seeks to do you harm, and you channel the energy of Thurisaz in self-defense, it is something that's going to turn out well for you instead of for the person that is actively attacking you. So that is a short summary of what Thurisaz can and does mean. There are, of course, as always, more interpretations, but as always, these summaries are just to give you a little background, to give you an overall feeling of the actual energy that is the rune itself. So we come now to the divination part of Thurisaz. Now, what does it mean when one sees upright Thurisaz in divination? It tends to mean that, as said in the previous segment, that it often brings with it trials, it brings with it evils. So basically, again, back to those trials, those evils that are going to be showing up in a reading like this. They often represent a challenge, whether it falls actually in the challenge slot or whether it falls in the past or the future or the outcome, whatever. It represents evil, chaos, temptations. Prudence is called for in the interpretation of what it actually means within the context of a question, and using your own feelings, your own intuition as a reader to figure out what exactly Thurisaz means in this case within the context of the inquiry. So, it can signify that one has power of a sort. It can be a warning that one does not misuse this power for their own detriment or the detriment of another. Because as we have discussed in Urus, once you have strength, once you are in a position of power, whether this be because you have a position of power, whether this be because you have material wealth, or whether somebody is infatuated or in love with you and you start abusing that, whether it be, basically telling lies or whatever, and people are willing to believe you, etc., etc. Again, this Rune 2 is about that in a way, but whereas Urus is about the actual concept of the strength itself, Thurisaz is about the actual expression of such negative strength in a way. So when one sees Thurisaz show up in upright, it tends to mean that somebody has not honored their Urus in a proper, creative, constructive manner. It tends to mean that somebody has used their Urus in a selfish, degrading, destructive manner. And again, this does not necessarily have to be consciously done. It can simply be done in a way that, I don't see anything wrong with this, or your action may affect somebody else in such a way that you have not foreseen. But when this Rune shows up, it is a warning. Mind your actions, mind what you're doing, because the other party, who or whatever that may be, will perceive this as a threat or damage in some way, shape, or form. Or in the case that this is about your own situation, it can of course mean the opposite, that somebody else is acting out against you. So, again, the whole power thing comes into play, the whole energy thing. How does one handle their actions? How is one's conduct? Is one of proper conduct, or is one of selfish conduct? Is one of abusive conduct? So yeah, dishonest means, harmful means, chaos, evil, temptation, those sorts of things. Whether it be directed at somebody else, from somebody else towards you, or you directing it inward, or somebody else directing it inward towards themselves, depending on the question you ask. That is often what Thurisaz means. However, that said, upright Thurisaz also brings with it the strength to overcome such obstacles, such strengths, such weaknesses, I should say, such trials, such evils, such tests. So it all depends on what one does with the information that one acquires or has acquired, or perhaps already possesses, and how one utilizes their own strength, their own conduct after receiving the warning of Thurisaz. And in the case of somebody else doing it, doing harmful things to you, again we come back to the example of the thorn, the analogy of the thorn, that Thurisaz is a defensive power. In this case, Thurisaz becomes the thorn that you have as the proverbial rose to fend off any and all attackers that, even though they may be doing harm to you, again, whether willfully or unknowingly, doesn't matter. You can and will be able to fend them off and deflect their attack in a proper manner. That is what Thurisaz upright can mean. Now, spiritually speaking, you can think of Thurisaz as the symbol of your spiritual perseverance. How much are you willing to sit through trials, through evils coming your way? Will you succumb? Will you pass the test? Will you fall? Will you become a victim? Will you succeed in your trials? That doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be hard. You don't really have to be somebody that's always steely. I mean, I make no secret of it. I mean, when I face trials, I have a hard time, just like everybody else does. It doesn't necessarily mean that just because you are a rune master or rune mistress, even though I don't call myself that, because, I think that sounds kind of, I don't really feel that I deserve that title just yet. But anyway, it doesn't necessarily mean that to a degree, if you understand the runes, or if you are a shaman or a other kind of individual with some degree of power or authority, whether it be in the spirit world or in the physical world, or both perhaps. It doesn't necessarily mean that your trials will be hard, but at the end of the day, what really matters is that you pass the test in and of itself. Because it is one thing to lay down on your bed and cry and then get up and go on with what you were doing and actually succeeding, or you can choose to lay down on your bed and cry and never ever get up and run away, to put it bluntly. So that's basically in a way what Thurisaz is. It is overcoming the evil within, without, from whatever source, again, willfully or unknowingly posed upon you. So, I mean, order is born from chaos, to come to that chaos aspect of Thurisaz. Order is born from chaos, but out of order, when order crumbles, comes chaos. And out of that chaos, eventually order arises again. So it is a cycle that never ends. It has existed since the beginning of the physical universe. And in some way, shape, or form will always continue as long as the physical universe exists. So, it is the infinite cycle of life, pretty much. It is a power that, again, you can use constructively or destructively. So, good and evil, these concepts that we have in the physical world, they are, polar opposites, but in the end, evil, even though it is very unpleasant to experience it, it is nothing more than the purification process that takes place to cleanse and purify that what is good and what we call right and benevolent and delight, if you will. Because evil at the end of the day only exists to destroy the unworthy, to destroy that which is not good enough, not pure enough, and in the end evil devours itself, and all that will be left is those that were actually worthy to, or those, whatever, that was worthy to survive this purification process. So, it is, think of it like somebody that is creating a statue with like a, it is in a way a sculpting tool for our own psyche, for our own experience, whether it be as a human being, whether it be as a spiritual entity, as in the soul, the soul complex, if you will. It is necessary evil in a way. Evil is necessary just as much as good is, because at the end of the day, we would not be growing unless evil were to constantly challenge us, if it were not to constantly keep us on our toes as beings, as people. Because we would become lazy, we would become complacent, we would be weakening ourselves. So evil, just like good, has its purpose. And I mean, so many people ask themselves, why is there evil, why is there hurt, why is there suffering? Well, believe me, I have had my share of evil in life, and I never was happy to see evil or have evil done to me. I am under no illusion that somehow this knowledge is going to make it easier to endure evil, because it's not supposed to be easy to endure evil in any way. That is the whole point of it. So Thurisaz is a very powerful, very strong rune. It is a very rune that some people feel should be skipped over, shoved under the bed, like in a dank, dark, rusty corner to be forgotten, perhaps, because we don't want evil, we only want love and light. But what they fail to understand is that chaos and temptations and evil are just as much part of everyday life as good and light and love and benevolence is. So, when you suffer, in the end, there is always something that we can gain from it. And it does not mean that it is just, it does not mean that it is right, it does not mean that it is pleasant. Again, I keep coming back to that, it is not pleasant, it is not meant to be pleasant. And of course you're going to call out for justice, of course you're going to call out for God or the gods or the universe and ask for help and assistance, and that is perfectly fine, obviously, because when you are in that place, you're never, never going to be, hey, this is just going to be walk in the park, It is the purification process again, because we learn by being tested, we learn by facing adversity. We do not learn by sitting on a couch and having nothing negative ever happening to us. So, and at the end of the day, like I said, evil, it will end up devouring itself, because the people who do evil, the people who do evil willingly in this case specifically, they always end up with a sort of emptiness inside. And what I always like to think is that even though in the physical world there may not always be justice as we know it, for example, like a dictator that kills billions of people and ends up killing himself, who I'm talking about, he seems to get off easy without being punished by other people for it, But in a way, the very fact that he ended up in that position where he actually put a bullet in his own brain, we're talking about Hitler, of course, that goes to show that really this person was reliant on external factors to keep him satiated, to keep him from feeling emptiness, because as soon as his little war was over, his Third Reich ambitions, he ended up just killing himself because he had nothing else to live for. His dreams were shattered, and so he kills himself. And in that sense, that is also the difference between good and evil. Whereas good exists and thinks and feels that it is comfortable with with being happy and letting others be happy, evil always wants and wants and wants and needs and takes and consumes and devours. And good sits there and is content, is happy with what is basically. So that is always the nature of evil, and that is always why evil eventually ends up devouring itself, because it only exists by feeding off of external sources, and eventually it is going to starve, because there's going to be nothing left to feed on in that vicinity, and it will simply die and wither away, and then everything will have been for nothing, because now there no longer is anything to consume. And so it is left with a hollow, devoid shell of what it could have been. So there is no ultimate satisfaction, no ultimate victory in evil, because evil is always just destruction, and from destruction is always just the reduction of something. And out of destruction always comes creation. So no matter what you are going through, no matter what you may have gone through in the past, what you will be going through in the future, always remember that life is a cycle, and no matter how bad or tough the times may be, as many of you may probably have been going through as well, because it's Mercury retrograde still, and believe me, it's been kicking my ass. I'm not sure about you guys, but so basically always keep in mind that after the bad times always come good times. That's basically the lesson that I want to give you guys here when it comes to the spiritual interpretation of Thurisaz. So yeah, to give an example of how Thurisaz may show up in a rune reading. I expect this rune to show up in situations where one is going through a tough time, when one encounters people or other entities that wish to do them harm, or whose actions are harmful and detrimental in some way, shape, or form. Again, whether intentionally or unintentionally, or when one that is being read for has intentions or doing something in some way, shape, or form towards the thing that is being inquired about, that they're doing, that is doing harm to other people. So in the former, it is a warning. In the latter, it is also a warning, but from different angles. So, for example, if one has a colleague at work, for example, and this colleague is spreading lies and slander about somebody, and you go sit down, you ask the runes, like, what can I do to stop it? This rune may show up, to signify that this person may be manifesting evil in your life, but also in theirs, because obviously it's not a very healthy, spiritually beneficial act to go ahead and slander other people. So at the same time, this rune can in that case be interpreted both as a warning that the other person is in fact spreading these lies and rumors about you and that they are doing evil and harm to you, but at the same time it is also a thorn for you, as the proverbial rose, that you are in possession of such thorns and that you can do things to A, shield yourself from it, B, not let it affect you, and that you can utilize this. And whether it be by directly confronting this said colleague and asking him to stop and explaining how the situation really is, for example, or whether you simply choose to ignore it, or whatever you do to put a stop to it, but or what you do not do to stop it, in case you just choose the I am not going to give a crap route. So that's an example of how Thurisaz may show in upright in a rune reading. Thurisaz, when it shows up converse, what does it mean? Well, Thurisaz converse tends to mean that the evil is in some way, shape, or form, that it is hidden, or that it can appear to be disguised as good. That it can even seem to be a safe or beneficial thing to you at first glance, or to somebody else that you're reading for, So actually, it might be evil in disguise. It may be something that, while at first glance seems to be beneficial to you, that may actually turn out to be something harmful the further you get down the line, It is an indication generally that there are unknown dangers, unknown factors that you, from your physical world perspective, cannot see or are perhaps overlooking, or as said, that can even appear to be disguised as something beneficial. It basically can also mean that when you are thinking about doing something, such as perhaps, should I ask this person out or whatever, and they have just been recovering from a breakup, it might be a bad time right now to go do that, might be best to wait a few weeks. So in that case, it might show up, for example, and it might just be like, wait a little bit, because right now I know you really want to do it, but please wait a little bit with asking this individual out, because they have just been recovering from a breakup, and so we'll reject you if you go ahead and ask now. So basically it is just hidden evil in whatever sense. When somebody is being dishonest, when somebody is that sort of thing. So spiritually, what does converse Thurisaz mean? Basically, the way I interpret this is, one can think of it as an eye for an eye principle almost. Somebody else attacks you, and in turn you feel that it is reasonable for you to get even, retaliate, that sort of thing. Now, why do I say this? Because of the whole, what appears to be good may in fact be evil, the whole aspect. Because it may seem like the straightforward and just thing to do to defend yourself, to defend your loved ones, etc. But really all that you're going to be creating by acting out like that is just more evil. Because repaying the whole, to quote the proverb, an eye for an eye just leaves the whole world blind. That is pretty much what this is saying. Because if everybody were to gouge out an eye for every single person that lost an eye, we would pretty much all be one-eyes, So, and not for the right reason, like Odin did. So that's basically what you could interpret this as. When you think of things in terms of what is morally right or morally wrong, again, coming back to that initial rune of Fehu, sharing the wealth, think of it as the negative aspect of sharing the wealth. And again, choosing a certain path, we all have free will. But if we choose the quote-unquote wrong path, the path that is either the least resistance, the path that is either at first seeming to be a positive path, or perhaps the path because it is the right thing to do in our cultural perspective, it may just create more problems down the line. And so again, it may seem that it is good, but it is in fact an evil to be committing such acts or thinking along such lines. That's another example of how that may work, how it may appear disguised as good, but is actually an evil in the long run. Because no matter how much you hope that this person is going to change, they are probably not going to change. So, to give you an example of how this rune may show up in a rune reading itself, think of it as, for example, when you are making a decision or currently considering making a decision, which may seem good to you at this time, but it is actually a bad thing because it may have a hidden snake in the grass, for example. When you're about to deal with somebody that is being covert, being dishonest, trying to cheat you out of your money, or some other heinous activity, or perhaps it is also a warning that you have not yet thought the consequences or the situation through properly just yet. When you have not yet examined all angles, and making a hasty decision right now is just going to be detrimental to you at some point, in some way, some form, some shape. So, to go back on that example of the colleague gossiping about you. So imagine that this same colleague that you expect, or suspect, I should say, that you suspect has been slandering you, been spreading lies about you, been gossiping about you. He suddenly invites you to a party. Now, you're not sure whether he's been gossiping about you, but you have suspected it. You have heard a few rumors here or there, and you suspect that this person is in fact the source of these rumors. So he invites you to a party. Now, you go ahead and cast the runes and ask, should I go to this party? Now, this rune shows up as the challenge, for example. It is converse. So the good may appear disguised as evil. But on the other hand, it's been a while that you've been to a party, you could, use the stress relief, etc. And you go to the party, because you can't really understand what the runes are saying with this. You're like, what could possibly be the harm in going to a party like this? It's just a friendly get-together of colleagues and friends of colleagues and blah, blah, blah. So you go there And you find that people have actually been, that you're getting weird looks, that you're getting weird stares, and you see people whispering whenever you walk past. And you notice this, and you're being like, am I just going crazy, or am I just being paranoid? And all these people seem to know something about you, they seem to be talking about you, and you just cannot make sense of it. So we meet up with this colleague, the one that you were invited to this party by. And, he starts out being nice and being talkative and just, making a friendly chat and whatever. And all of a sudden, one of his friends comes in and he joins the conversation, and he's like, this colleague of yours, he suddenly starts making jokes about you, he starts ridiculing you, and blah, blah, blah. And, basically, because he's now with a friend, and you know how it goes, sometimes people can be arseholes, basically, when they're with their own friends, and when they're, people like that, basically. So, you feel bad about this, and you go home and you realize that suddenly, oh hey, so this is what the runes were talking about. This was actually a bad idea, because I wanted to relax, I wanted to have some fun, I wanted to have some like a few drinks or whatever, and just hang out with friends. You just had your evening ruined by this supposedly kind colleague that just invited you to a party with the purpose of ripping on you, and you now found out that people have actually been gossiping about you. So because he had been spreading lies. So yeah, that's basically how one could expect this. You thought it would be a great idea to attend the party. It turns out to be something that is better for you. And there you go. What does Thurisaz in reverse mean in terms of divination? Thurisaz in reverse is actually a very good sign to see, because it literally means that when reverse Thurisaz shows up, because it is the rune of evil and it is inverted, it basically means that the evil is really not as evil or as bad or as big as you think it's going to be. Basically, when you look at something like a daunting project or a threat from somebody, for example, if you receive a threat from somebody, then they're going to be like, I'm going to murder your family or whatever. And basically, if you cast the runes on it, is this person actually going to murder my family? And this rune shows up in reverse, it's going to be like he's just talking out of his backside, basically. So. When you perceive threats in the physical world and you cast the runes on said threats, and this rune shows up, it is generally an indication that the evil is bigger than it actually is. It appears bigger than it is. So it appears more daunting, more damaging, more vile than what you're actually going to be experiencing. In other words, it's more bark than bite. So, it can also be seen that when you're thinking about, from my personal experience quite recently, when I was inquiring, like, should I just give up on this situation? Should I just walk away from it? I had this rune show up and was like, I was inquiring, should I walk away? I cast the runes. Challenge was reverse Thurisaz. Evil is not as evil as it seems. So I decided that I was going to be, engaging the situation instead of walking away from it and completely distancing myself from the situation. So, that's basically how you can interpret it. It is more of an illusion. The illusion of the threat is bigger than the actual threat is. It may actually also be that for example, something which may seem evil to you may actually be, in retrospect, turn out to be a blessing for you. So yeah, always think carefully on whether you walk away from a challenge or whether you stick to a challenge. And spiritually speaking, you can think of the good cloaked in something which may seem, again, like a bad thing, or because there is lessons that you can learn from this experience, because there is some sort of fear that you have in relation to a situation, but at the end, after all is said and done, you will come out a stronger and better person than you were before. Even though some things may seem scary to you, even though some things may seem harmful to you, even afterwards, this will prove to be beneficial. Because, for example, if you've been taught certain things by your cultural and or religious, beliefs, for example, if you stick by them and you actually just, you stick by them, you do not make progress, you do not go out of your comfort zone, you always stick to what you know, you never explore other alternatives, other truths to that with which you were raised. You're never going to get very far. You're never going to expand your own personal, your own personal self, your own personal power, your own personal intelligence, if you will, even because being very narrow-minded and being very, straight to the point on certain things instead of considering the other party's opinions or options. While it may even have been taught to you that all the other stuff is bad. For example, if you are a very devout Christian that's very close-minded about, say, other religions or other spiritual stances, you see it as evil. But if you take a deeper look, you'll see that every single religion is pretty much about the same thing, even though there are wars about religion itself. But when you look behind the actual religious dogma, behind the actual religious the crap, all the laws and all the regulations, and because again, I'm an eclectic shaman. I really don't adhere to religion. I aim to build a relationship with the divine directly, not through some organization or whatever. So, but again, I aim to be not biased, because that is not my place. But speaking as somebody that is eclectic, I try to see things from all religious and spiritual viewpoints, and then take away from that by filtering out the bad, what I perceive to be bad, what I feel that is not productive, that is not of love, that I feel are fear-based dogmas or rules that are meant to control somebody or something, or control the masses even, if you will. So, when you look at the core of all religions, really what they're trying to teach mankind is you must love God, with your entire heart, your soul, your body, and you must love thy neighbor like yourself. And so there's three elements in pretty much all religions. Love the divine, love yourself, and love your fellow human being. That's basically what most religions teach at their core. And everything else other than those things, if there is a but or an if or a maybe after those three things, consider that man-made, because it is. So basically, when I say that from the viewpoint of somebody that is a religious person, that is very narrow-minded, they may see something that is actually good. They may see it as a bigger evil than it actually is, simply because they have been taught that way. And this is not necessarily their fault. It is simply how they were brought up. It is how they were, in a way, programmed. So I think it is up to each and every one of us to see the good behind the bad, but also see the good in the bad and see the good despite the bad. So yeah, that's basically how you can interpret reverse Thurisaz as on a spiritual level. Now, an example of how one would be expecting to see reverse Thurisaz in a rune reading. When the querent is afraid of something, like I mentioned earlier, when I was thinking about walking away from something, from a certain situation, and I cast the runes on it repeatedly, I might add, because I'm sometimes very stubborn like that, which is why I always go to other people for my own readings normally. And in this case, I actually had the readings confirmed that I did for myself by other readers, so I knew the outcome was good. But basically, the runes showed me the reverse Thurisaz as the challenge, and they were like, no, this may seem like a bad thing right now, this may seem detrimental to you right now, but you should stick with it, because in the end, you will be happy with the outcome. And so, here I am, still on this path that I was thinking of walking away from, because I was told that I would, find happiness in a way here. So, for example, I can expect this to show up for people, for the querent, if they are afraid of something, if they don't trust something, if they don't, if they see something as bad, well, in fact, it may be good, or if they, or if the evil may seem scarier than it actually is, it may not be as big an obstacle as you may perceive it to be initially. There may be a modicum of danger, because again, reverse Thurisaz can mean that there is actually a certain amount of evil or danger or harm or whatever, but that it is perfectly doable to overcome this without much or any danger or harm to one's own self. So that is pretty much the conclusion of the video on the rune of Thurisaz, the rune of chaos, and we will now be moving on to the rune known as Ansus, which is Odin's rune, or the messenger rune. And I hope to catch you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Hail.